Hey guys, so my name is Finn Dardis Green. I'm currently in London Business School. I'm studying for a master's degree in management. I graduated from UCL History in 2020, so right in the middle of COVID. Obviously, I studied history when I was at UCL. Again, like I mentioned, right now I'm doing a master's in management degree. To kind of explain that degree very briefly, it's kind of a combination of corporate strategy, corporate finance, economics, and kind of organizational structure. Really, the main aim of this degree is to kind of build the toolkit necessary to get a job and to get a career in either corporate strategy, strategy consulting, or investment banking. And London Business School is definitely one of the leading schools in this regard in terms of getting people onto those type of degrees. Sorry, not degrees, onto those type of careers. So yeah, if you want to learn more about LBS, I'd recommend you Google it, but it's something that you do, after you graduated. I think definitely UCL will have some events, hopefully, in the next few years where you can look at kind of postgraduate degrees that aren't really in history. I'm trying to organize some now. But, if you want to find out more information about that, I'd highly recommend that you, either go ahead and go just Google it. Honestly, the business school is pretty good in terms of student ambassadors. And there's a lot of other universities that do this, LSE, Warwick, Oxford, and Oxford. Actually, no, Oxford doesn't, Cambridge, as well as ones across Europe. Also, if you're looking to apply to London Business School specifically, and you're watching this video, please feel free to reach out to me directly. My contact details should be in the description of the video. But if they're not, just look up Finn Dardis Green, Dardisgreen, on LinkedIn, and shoot me a message saying that you saw my video at UCL, and I should add you back. So in terms of how I decided to kind of do what I'm doing now, it is kind of a weird swap to go from history to management. There's definitely a lot of people who come out of UCL history and end up in law. There's definitely a lot of people who come out of UCL history, or some people who come out of UCL history and end up in finance, in investment banking, or just banking in general. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily the most common path, but given that we're going to UCL and we're in London, it's definitely a path which appeals to a lot of people. The thing for me was that I, having worked in a couple of startups when I was an undergraduate, kind of found that I was very interested in, corporate strategy. I was very interested in the idea of building businesses, but not like a kind of local business, but very much like multinational organizations. I was very interested in kind of startups and technology, and kind of having found that interest, I decided that the kind of next step for me to get the kind of skills and the experience that I needed to get into, kind of corporate or finance or corporate strategy role further down the line was to go into strategy consulting. Now, there's a couple of very big firms across the world that do strategy consulting. The kind of leading ones are called MBB, which is McKinsey, Bain, and BCG. You've probably heard of a couple of them. They're a lot bigger than you'd realize in the kind of corporate world. The big four accountancies also all have their own strategy consulting departments. They're worth looking up if that's the sort of thing that you're interested in. There's also a number of other firms across London and the world that kind of specialize purely in this type of consulting. It's primarily about corporate strategy, as you would expect. And within that, it's really just about, products, business structure, and mergers and acquisitions are kind of the three big kind of overview buckets that you'd kind of put corporate strategy consulting jobs into. Now, I looked and I found that I was very interested in this idea of strategy consulting because I thought it would give me the experience and the skills that were kind of necessary to go into, a corporate strategy role in my kind of later career. And I came to London Business School mainly because they're the best business school for getting a job in strategy consulting. It's very much a leading school in not only the UK, but in Europe and in the world. I believe we're in the top 5. You can check the Financial Times rankings and make a decision on what schools are the best for yourself. But we're definitely a leading school when it comes to my course, which is management. And when it comes to strategy consulting, the reality of it is that most of the people who go into strategy consulting have at least a master's degree. There's definitely other paths to get into it later on. A lot of people go through management consulting. They go through another form of consulting, and then they kind of transition in as a kind of specialist in a particular industry. But if you want to get in as a kind of entry-level role in strategy consulting, having this kind of degree really helps boost your odds. And I would say that, having come to LBS to do strategy consulting, I actually ended up getting a job offer in product management, which I've currently accepted. And, that is a totally different kind of ballgame. That's a very different conversation where it's more about, particularly more about the product that you're making and the market that you're selling it to than it is about the kind of overall strategy of the firm as a business. But, that was basically the kind of relatively long story of how I got to where I am now. There's definitely a lot more to it. There's a lot more particular experiences and people that I spoke to who told me that this was a good path, people whose opinion I valued quite highly. But, in the long story short of it, I'm where I am now because I believe that it's the next step in a career path that I'm kind of open to flexibility on, but I definitely have an idea of what I want to be doing. Now, when it comes to the skills, that's the next question. What are the skills that I did in my undergraduate degree, which helped get me to where I am? It might be at the bottom of the screen. I think there's two kind of key skills with history that you can really take advantage of no matter what career path you go into. And the first is your ability to use qualitative analytics. And the second is your ability to communicate. Now, in this first kind of bracket, this qualitative analysis, you might think and say, how does a business problem have anything to do with history? How does a legal issue have anything to do with history? And the reality of it is that they don't. But the framework that you use to approach a history question is actually very similar to the framework that you use to approach a business question or a marketing question or a kind of legal question, where you need to break down and understand what the key drivers behind a specific event or a specific action or a specific need are. When it comes to history, it's why did this historical event happen? What were the key kind of determinants socially or culturally or militarily or economically or any other type of history that you can think of that kind of led to this event? And it's actually very similar when it comes to understanding cases and understanding products and markets in the kind of corporate world. Being able to talk about why things have happened and understand, not from a numbers perspective, but from a people perspective or a social perspective, why the response to certain things has been what it is actually very important. And the kind of skill set and approach that you take on UCL or on history at UCL is very similar to the skill set and approach that you take when it comes to problem solving kind of almost anywhere else. The second key thing that I really learned from undergraduate degree is communication, understanding the key points that you're trying to make, being able to support those points with strong evidence, and being able to make those points as concisely as possible. When it comes to those 2,500 word essays, which are going to be the staple of your life at UCL, especially if you do a history degree, that kind of type of communication, that written communication, isn't as common, especially at that length. And people might try to tell you, oh, but you just wrote forever and ever, you're just a writer. It's not like that. You are really making a point, you're making an argument, and you're supporting that argument well. And if you can learn to kind of communicate verbally the same way that you can kind of communicate on your kind of history essays or on whatever essays that you write, you'll find that you're actually very able to make quite strong points and to really convince people of what you're trying to say, which is honestly a very valuable skill. Now, the final thing that I want to kind of address is advice for students thinking about studying history at UCL. Regardless of where you are in your UCL journey, maybe this advice will be useful or maybe it won't, but especially if you're starting on, I think the two kind of key pieces of advice that I can give you are to get involved as much as possible and to really understand what it is that you're trying to do and where it is that you're trying to go. Now, in that get involved side of things, I remember one of the biggest regrets that I had in my time at UCL was that in my first year, my involvement at different clubs and different activities was just not what it could have been. I spent a lot of time, hanging out with friends that I made at halls, which was really useful in terms of building friendships and relationships. But I also spent a lot of time kind of sitting around watching Netflix. I spent a lot of time eating takeout. I spent a lot of time going out. And that's fun and that's enjoyable. It's relaxing, and enjoy your freedom and kind of learn how to be an adult, because most of you are going to be pretty young coming into UCL. I certainly was. Um, but at the same time, try to get as involved as possible as you can in almost anything that interests you. I think the thing with UCL and the thing with living in London generally is that it's not like what life was like when you were in sixth form, or when you were living at home, where there was accountability. You are not really, you're kind of accountable for your own decisions now in a way that you really weren't before. Before it was go to class, you're going to get a detention, or you're going to do poorly on your exams, or do the dishes, or your mom's going to yell at you. Whereas now it's you can kind of do whatever you want, and then there's a certain fun, there's certain freedom and liberation in that, and seriously enjoy it, because that's part of life. Life should be fun and enjoyable, but at the same time, you got to hold yourself accountable. You've got to make sure that if there's stuff that you want to do, you're actually going in and doing it. If there's that club event that's being held, if you're trying to go to the induction of this so and so society that you're interested in, don't skip it because you're kind of bored or you're lazy. Don't kind of say, oh no, I don't want to have to like take a shower and go out and do stuff. Like, go. Because when it comes to your time leaving university and looking back, that's the sort of stuff you're going to remember. The stuff that I remember most fondly about my time at university was the clubs that I was involved in, and the charity drives that I was able to organize. And the people who I met through those societies are actually some of my closest friends now that I've left, and the people I've stayed in touch with the most. So I really, really suggest that, getting involved, and that means getting involved in class. That means speaking up. I know nobody speaks up. Speak up. It really makes a difference in how much you learn, how much you enjoy it. It means, getting involved in the sports team that you're interested in, or, the cultural society that you enjoy, or, the activity that you want to be a part of. That's really important. Get involved in the career path that you're interested in. If you want to be a writer, go join one of the newspapers. I don't know them that well. I didn't do that sort of thing. If you want to be in music or media, go join one of the music or media clubs. If you want to be a sportsman, I'm sorry, dude, it's maybe too late. It was for me. No, it's a joke. But no, seriously, if you want to be involved in finance or in consulting or in engineering, you're doing a history degree, or in any of these career paths, go join UCL Guild and get involved in those clubs and societies. Because getting involved at the beginning of your first year will pay dividends in third year when you're desperately scrambling to kind of get a job. And that kind of brings me quite neatly to my second point, which is really understand what you're there for. My perhaps biggest letdown, I think, in terms of understanding and taking advantage of my time at UCL was not really knowing 100% why I was there. It felt like it was just the next step, that you're meant to go to college and you're meant to do a degree. And I chose history because it was a degree that interested me, and it was a degree that I'd studied before and that I'd done quite well at. And those were good reasons to do it, but I then didn't kind of set another goal for myself. Up until now, the goal has been do well at school, get into university. Now you're here. Now you need to redefine what your goals are. And really have a little bit of a long-term vision there. Understand the career path that you're interested in. Understand the type of impact that you want to make on the world. Understand the type of person that you want to be. Because that's all up for your own definition at this point now. It's up to you. And the opportunity's there, especially at a great university like UCL. You have that opportunity. But what you don't have is you don't have anybody telling you, behind you, looking over your shoulder saying you need to do this now. You have to be that person for yourself. And I really, really suggest that, in order to kind of take advantage and in order to really, really appreciate your time at university and look back and think fondly, be that person over your own shoulder to say, hey, you need to do this now, you need to do that now. In that regard, I think having a career plan as well needs to be something that you are aware of. I know it seems early. You're in first year or second year. I know you're like, dude, I have no idea. I'm 18. I don't need to worry about that for 3 years. You do. Here's the reality of it is that most of your job applications, if you want to go into a kind of structured recruitment role, are going to be going in at the beginning of third year. If you want to get into one of those structured recruitment roles, you probably need to have some internship experience on your CV beforehand, which is something you need to be applying for at the beginning of second year. And if you want to get into one of those internship experiences, you need to understand how to do job applications. You need to understand how to write a CV. You need to understand how to do all this career stuff. You learn that in first year. That would be the time to do it if you really want to get ahead and you really want to pursue something in one of those fields. I promise you it's doable. I know plenty of people who've come out of UCL who've gone into some really crazy, great, interesting, amazing jobs, or gone into some really interesting master's degrees that will then take them into super great, crazy, amazing, interesting jobs. But you got to do it yourself, and you got to do it as early as possible. And I'm not saying you have to dedicate your life to it and have this be your entire personality, but just a few hours a week. Take, like, I don't know, a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, or, you know, like a Tuesday morning or whatever, for 2 or 3 hours to just really research the career that you're interested in, look at the clubs and societies that are involved, you know, with people at UCL, and try to get in touch with people who are going into those career paths. Use LinkedIn is probably your best resource, to be honest. So get a LinkedIn profile and kind of look up how to make your profile. That would probably be the first step. You know, if you want to reach out to me, if you want to learn more about, you know, consulting or product management or finance, you know, I could be a resource to you. Seriously, shoot me a message. Say, hey, I watched your video and I'd love to learn more about this kind of career path. It's never too early to get started. And the earlier you get started, the more that you can kind of build up your profile and be successful coming out of UCL history, or UCL in general. You seem like 3 years seems like a really long time. It's really not. Time will fly by, and the next thing you know, you'll be sitting here doing a talk like me to a bunch of people who probably closed off the video already. But if you stayed this long, thank you for listening to me. I hope this talk was somewhat useful to you. I hope you listened to what I say. You know, you can do anything that you want. Just start doing it effectively, and start doing it yesterday. You know, you need to be so on top of doing stuff and so on top of doing things. But if you do, I promise you will enjoy it. I promise you will get the full university experience. I promise that the world will be a much more interesting and enjoyable place. There's so much out there, and you have almost nothing tying you down. Go take advantage of that. Thank you for taking time to listen to my talk. Have a great day, and please feel free to reach out if you want to. Thank you. Oh, my LinkedIn is Finn Dardis Green, Dardis space Green, and then Finn is my first name. In case that information isn't available to you, please feel free to, you know, connect with me if you want to ask me more questions about anything that you think I'm involved with.